It was a Tuesday, the kind of day that feels like a clean slate, where the gears of life finally align. I walked into the building and felt the rhythm of the place for once. My history quiz was finished, the answers certain, the grade already secured in my mind. I caught my reflection in the hallway glass and didn't look away. Everything felt balanced. I navigated the crowded corridors with a steady pace, moving toward the cafeteria. The space was a wall of sound, 600 students talking, laughing, and scraping chairs against the floor. It was a roar, but today it felt like a symphony I was part of. I found my usual spot at the plastic table, set my tray down, and leaned back. The air was thick with the smell of cafeteria food, but it didn't bother me. I watched the room, feeling light and entirely at ease. I pulled my phone out, not checking for messages, just scrolling through the time. I felt invisible in the best way possible, secure, untroubled, and completely unaware that the ground was about to shift. The phone buzzed against the plastic tabletop, a sharp, vibrating rattle that cut through the cafeteria noise. I glanced down. A message from Mia. "Hey, did you see what someone posted about you?" My thumb hovered over the screen. I tapped the notification. The display flickered and loaded a feed of screenshots. My own words, pulled from private threads, stared back at me. Every midnight confession, every unfiltered rant about school, and every secret detail about the boy I liked was laid bare. It was all there, formatted for the entire year group to scroll through. I swiped down. The list went on. I saw the timestamps of messages I had sent months ago, stripped of their context and presented as a public spectacle. My pulse jumped, a sudden, hard thud against my ribs. I looked at the surrounding tables. The roar of the cafeteria seemed to sharpen. I sat frozen, my fingers gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white, staring at the digital evidence of my own betrayal. I lifted my head. The cafeteria, once a symphony of noise, felt like a cage. The walls seemed to pull inward, shrinking the space between the rows of tables. 3 sections away, he was staring at me. His eyes were fixed, unblinking, locked onto mine with a terrifying clarity. The air left my lungs in a sharp, involuntary gasp. I saw the recognition in his gaze. He had read every word. He knew the secrets I had whispered in the dark. He knew exactly how I felt. My tray clattered as I shoved it away, the plastic sliding across the table with a screech that cut through the room. I stood up, my chair legs scraping harshly against the floor. I did not look back. I navigated the narrow aisle, my pulse hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I reached the double doors and pushed through, the sudden silence of the hallway hitting me like a physical blow. I sat on the cold tile floor, eyes fixed on the second hand of my watch. It swept around the dial, once, twice, 23 times. The silence of the bathroom was absolute. My phone lay face up on the floor beside me. At midnight, the screen lit up. A notification from Mia. I picked it up, my thumb trembling as I scrolled through the message. It was a long, dense block of text. She claimed she felt invisible, that I was too self-absorbed, that the leak was merely a miscalculation. She dismantled our years of history in a few paragraphs, framing her choice as a necessity. I read the words, then read them again. There was no apology, only a list of reasons why my trust had been a burden to her. I stared at the glowing text until the screen dimmed. The justification felt hollow, a thin shield for a deliberate act of destruction. I did not type a response. I did not delete the message. I simply turned the phone face down against the hard floor. The light vanished. I pulled my knees to my chest and leaned my head against the stall wall. I left the bathroom only when the hallways were empty, my footsteps silent against the linoleum. For 2 days, the school became a labyrinth of avoidance. I abandoned the main corridors, choosing the service stairs that smelled of floor wax and dust. I kept my head down, watching the scuff marks on the floor, instead of the faces of the people passing by. Every muffled laugh in the distance sounded like a direct accusation. I felt the heat of eyes on my back, even when the hallways were deserted. I lived in the margins, slipping through doorways, just as groups of students rounded the corners. The library became my sanctuary, a place where the rules of silence protected me. I sat in the furthest corner, behind the tall stacks of reference books, where the light barely reached. I watched the clock on the wall, measuring my existence in the minutes I could remain unseen. I reached my locker on the second day, my fingers fumbling with the combination dial. The metal felt cold and unforgiving under my touch. I kept my gaze fixed on the lock, refusing to look at the students moving through the hallway. I heard footsteps stop just behind me. I stiffened, my shoulders rising toward my ears, bracing for the inevitable mockery. I prepared myself to apologize, to offer some hollow excuse for the private thoughts that had been plastered across the school. I expected a laugh, a taunt, or the sound of someone walking away in disgust. Instead, I heard the soft metallic click of a locker door closing nearby. He stepped into my peripheral vision, leaning his weight against the metal frame next to mine. He did not look at the other students. He did not look at the floor. He turned his head and looked directly at me. The hallway noise seemed to drop away, leaving only the sound of his breathing. He did not sneer. He did not look away. He looked at me with a steady, calm expression. "Are you okay?" he asked. The question hung in the air, simple and devoid of judgment. I stared at him, my mind blank, unable to process the lack of malice in his voice. He leaned his shoulder against the locker, his posture relaxed and unmoving. "That was a horrible thing for someone to do to you," he said. The words struck with a physical force, cutting through the defensive walls I had built over the last 48 hours. My throat tightened. The air in the hallway seemed to vibrate. I tried to swallow, but my chest hitched. The first tear tracked a hot line down my cheek, followed quickly by another. I turned my head, trying to hide the shaking of my jaw, but he did not look away. He did not step back or offer a hollow joke to ease the tension. He simply stood there, his gaze steady and anchored on me. The dam broke. I leaned my forehead against the cool metal of the locker, my shoulders heaving, with the force of the sobs I had been suppressing. I felt small, exposed, and entirely undone. He waited. He did not reach out to touch me, but he did not leave. He stayed in that space, giving me the room to fall apart completely. Minutes passed. Eventually, my breathing slowed. The shaking in my hands subsided. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and looked up. He was still there, his expression unchanged. "Nothing I read changed anything," he said. "You are still you." The weight of the last few days began to shift. I thought of Mia, the girl who had been my shadow for years, now reduced to a series of justifications on a screen. Her midnight text had been a wall of excuses, a desperate attempt to frame her betrayal as a miscalculation. She had claimed she felt invisible, as if my life were a stage she had been forced to watch from the wings. I looked at my phone, the screen dark and cold in my palm. I saw her name in my inbox, the notification still waiting. I didn't need her to understand. I didn't need her to admit she was wrong. I realized then that the people who hurt you, and then explain it away, are only ever protecting their own image. They are not looking for forgiveness. They are looking for absolution they haven't earned. I opened the thread. My thumbs moved across the glass, typing out a short, final sentence. It was not a plea for closure. It was a statement of fact. I hit send. I didn't wait for the bubbles to appear. I didn't wait for the inevitable notification of her typing back. I turned the phone face down on the desk and pushed it away. The silence in the room felt different now. It was the silence of a clean slate. The sting of exposure does not vanish overnight. It is a phantom sensation, a sudden heat in the chest when I walk through the school doors, or hear a group of students laughing behind me. I still catch myself checking my phone for notifications that no longer matter. A reflex born from weeks of living in the shadows. But then, I remember the hallway. I remember the way the light hit the floor tiles near my locker, and the steady, unmoving weight of his presence. That memory is my anchor. It is not a grand, cinematic victory, but a quiet, solid truth. He chose to see a person instead of a scandal, and in doing so, he gave me back the ability to see myself. I walk through the corridors now with my head up, not because I am fearless, but because I have learned that the noise of other people's opinions is just that, noise. It has no substance. It cannot touch the reality of who I am or the choices I have made to reclaim my own story. I have stopped looking for apologies from those who are incapable of giving them, I have stopped waiting for the whispers to stop, because I realized they were never about me in the first place. They were about the people who needed to tear others down to feel tall. I am doing all right. The slate is clean, the air is clear, and for the first time in a long time, I am simply existing in the present, moving forward one step at a time, entirely on my own terms.